Hello everyone, this is Dr. Steve Sachs, and I am going to show you information about relative cell references and absolute cell references in Microsoft Excel. This confuses people all the time, and if you don't know the differences between these and how to use them, you can really mess up doing Excel work. I'm using Excel 2010 for the example, but the concepts work in essentially any version of Excel. So I'm also assuming that you know how to do Excel formulae. You probably don't understand them yet, but I'm going to help with that in a moment, but at least you know how to make them. So here we go. This is a quick and dirty. I'm not editing, and just take it for what it's worth. Let me first open up a new Excel worksheet, and I'm going to make it larger to make it easier to see. By the way to do this, a lot of people don't know how to do it, is if you hold the Control key down and then use the scroller in Excel. If you scroll back and forth, you can change the size of things. First, I'm going to put in some raw data, and I'll put in some raw data also over here. And I'll go back to A3. Wasn't that a wonderful sound? It was a helicopter. You know I'm a pilot and I love hearing stuff like that. Okay, that's off the topic. I'm going to put in an Excel formula. I'm not going to use a function. I'm not going to do a sum function. I'm just going to do a simple formula to add these two cells up and put the result in A3. So equals A1 plus A2, and put the result there, and it reads as 15. And you can see that it's equals A1 plus A2, producing the 15. Now you might think that what this cell says is add 10 to 5 and give me 15, or if you're a little more sophisticated, you might think this says take whatever's in A1 and add it to A2 and put the result here. Up in the formula bar you can see that that's what it kind of says. But you would be wrong. What this formula actually says, and if you can think of formulae this way, you'll be way ahead of the game in Excel. This formula actually says take the cell that is 2 above me, above the location of the formula. Take the cell that's 2 above me and add it to the cell that is 1 above me and put the result here. That's what the formula really says. To prove that to you, or to demonstrate that to you, I'm going to copy this cell, A3, down to cell C6 on my sheet. Watch what happens when I copy the formula. Now, the formula says, here, let me give you the demonstrator here. The formula says, take the cell that's 2 above me, add it to the cell that's 1 above me, and put the result here. Take a look up here. I just copied it, right? I didn't type it in. Equals C4 plus C5. Now, if I copy this cell over to this new location, B6, think for a second what it's probably going to say. If you can figure this out, then that's really good. I'm going to copy the formula just one cell to the left, and it is exactly correct. It says, look up here, take the cell that's 2 above me, let me do this, take the cell that's 2 above me, add it to the cell that's 1 above me, and put the result here. This formula, take a look at the structure. This structure is the same here as it is here, as it is here. That is how Excel formulae basically work. Now let me do a slightly more complicated one. I'll put a 5 here, and I'll put a 40 there. I'm going to put a formula here that's going to add these two. So equals this one plus this one, and insert that. What this formula actually says. See if you can figure it out. Pause the recording for a second and see if you can say it the way I'm about to say it. Okay, here we go. What this formula actually says is take the cell that's 1 to the left and 1 up and add it to the cell that is 1 to the right and 1 down and put the result here. I'm going to copy this formula. I'll just copy it down here, down to there. And now let's see what it actually says. It says take the cell that's 1 to the left and 1 above me and add it to whatever's in the cell 1 to the right and 1 down and put the result here. If I put 1,000 in there, that's adding 1,000 to 0, right? It's the same structure. in real Excel, where you're doing it and somebody's paying you, these cells might be very distant from each other, and there might be lots of things added, subtracted, multiplied, exponentiated. But the idea is that it's a structure. Now, all of the formulae, I put a formula here, 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 and here. Wake up, machine. Oh, it's in a bad mood. There we go. All of those formulae involve what are called relative cell references. It's relative to the location of the formula. Let's go back to this simple one in cell A3. Relative to my location, relative to A3, go 2 up and then 1 up. Here, relative to my location, relative to C6, go 2 up and 1 up. Here, relative to my location, relative to D2, go 1 to the left and 1 up, and then 1 to the right and 1 down. These are called relative cell references. And when you copy a formula with relative cell references, the cell references adjust to the new location, because now you are copying into a different base location. I'm just going to copy this formula down here, and if you take a look up here, it's still relative to A8. Go 2 up and 1 up and put the result here. Those little arrows are just to help explain what's happening on the screen. Now we're going to look at something else called absolute cell references. When you put an absolute cell reference in a formula, that cell reference does not adjust to the new location. Let me copy this one. Equals A1 plus A2 copied to the right. Now it says equals B1 plus B2. The cell references adjusted when I went from here to here. Right? From here to here, they adjusted. Those are relative cell references. Now we're going to get into absolute cell references. I'll go to the next sheet, zoom it up a little bit, and let's say we're going to buy some things at a market. Okay, frogs, and let's say they cost $10 a piece, and lemons, and let's say they cost $6 a piece. Yeah, well, that's if you go to Gelson's, I suppose, but who cares? And let's say that the tax rate, for the moment, let's say that it's 9%. I'll go ahead and change that to a percentage so it's nice and easy to watch. So let's figure out how much tax we have to pay on each frog and how much tax we have to pay on each lemon. So I'm going to put a formula here. Here, let me just insert a new row. Let's say this is going to be how much a piece, and this is going to be tax. So to get the tax on frogs, I'll take the dollar amount that a frog costs and multiply it by the tax rate and insert that. So that tells me it's going to be 9, or I think I'll just put these in currency format so it looks better. So it's 90% tax if it's 9%, 90 cents tax on $10. That kind of makes sense. Now I'm going to make a mistake on purpose. I'm making a mistake. I'm being a fool, or I'm being actually an ignorant Excel user. So I'm going to copy this formula down. See what the formula says? B2 times F2. I'm using relative references. I haven't yet been smart enough to do absolute references. Let me show you that this is what it looks like. Take the cell that's 1 to the left of me and multiply it by the cell that's 1, 2, 3 to the right of me and put the result here. Right? So I'm going to copy that down here to try to get the tax on lemons, and it says nothing. Nothing. But it's the same. It's the same structure. There's the structure, and here I copied it down. There's the structure. Oh, I see what happened. I tried to multiply by the tax rate, but because I moved this down, this moved down to a cell that's empty. So what I should have done was tell the formula, look, when I copy this formula down, let me get rid of the arrows. When I copy this formula down, I want this to adjust. I want to go from B2 to B3. I want to go from frogs to lemons. But I want the tax to continue pointing at this cell. Don't adjust this one. No matter where I copy the formula, keep the tax rate in F2. Well, the way you do that is with what's called an absolute cell reference. So let me wipe out both of these and start again. I'm going to create a formula now knowing that I will be copying this cell, and I need to nail down F2, the tax rate, so that it doesn't adjust when I copy the formula down. So equals, I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply by F2, but now before I finish this I'm going to say I need F2 to be nailed down. I need it not to change, not to adjust when I copy the formula down. So I'm going to tap the F4 key across the top of your keyboard. You have F1 through F4. The easiest way to do this is to tap F4 once. It puts those dollar signs in. I don't know why Excel made them dollar signs. It should have made some kind of special symbol, but that's okay. The dollar signs mean it's an absolute cell reference, and I'm going to insert that. It still comes out to 90 cents, but if you look up in the formula bar, we now see this is an absolute cell reference. How can you tell? Because it's got those two dollar signs. So now when I copy this down, it does it correctly. Now this is still pointing to F2. Take a look at the precedent arrows. There's that formula, but this one's a little different. I'll just do it this way. Look, it's still pointing up here, and if I have something else, trees, you're going to buy a tree, and let's say they cost $250 a piece, and you want to know the tax, I'll just copy the formula down, and now it's $22.50. Why is it $22.50? Because it's still pointing at the tax. It's still pointing at F2. This is an absolute cell reference. The absolute cell reference will not adjust when you copy. I'm going to go back for a moment to the prior sheet. All of the cell references here, such as this one, look up here, no dollar signs. They will always adjust when you copy the cell. But for absolute references, I'm going to go to sheet 2. The cell where you've said don't change it as I copy will not change, and that's why we can just go on copying the cell down forever for all the items you're going to buy, and it's still all going to be affected by the tax rate. Now let's go back to the top one. You might think, well, why am I multiplying that by cell F2, which is the tax rate? Why don't I just say times 0.09 or times 9%? The reason is that you can change the tax rate and it will automatically affect all of these taxes. Instead of 9%, I'm going to make it 5%, 0.05 or 5%. Watch all of these change once I change it to 5%. So you want to point to a cell and you want to refer to that cell over and over and over again. In doing it that way, you can affect tens of thousands of cells at a time if you need to. I'm going to demonstrate this by making this thing a little smaller. And you can see the formula. It's always F2, F2, F2 because I put those dollar signs in. I allowed the B2, B3, B4 to change. Let me do this. I allowed those to change, but I did not allow F2 to change. I made it into an absolute cell reference using the F4 key. That'll give you at least a little feel for the value of absolute cell references, and it'll help you control your formulae when you're going to copy them. Basically, put in an absolute cell reference anytime you suspect that it's anytime in the future you might be copying that formula, and you're going to still have to refer to that one individual cell. Like in this case, I knew that I was going to have to refer to this cell, the tax rate, over and over and over again, so I knew that should be an absolute cell reference. I hope you find this useful, and I will catch you another time. This is Dr. Steve Sachs signing off.